one of the things that also made me do it was the speech that I have right before he comes out of the bathroom. It says everything about what created Joe. I saw this man. He was the first man I was with. He basically was someone who manipulated me the way I'm manipulating this young man the whole evening, and sent me on this dysfunctional journey. How pain begets pain, begets pain, begets pain. And I pulled Josh aside that night when we were shooting, and I said, Josh, this part right here is really important for you, because this is really what disturbed Joe. Then I learned just technically over the past couple of days the power of film. We look back over history, I've been thinking about Leni Riefenstahl, which, those films that just made, I know it seems like a leap, but it really just motivated people to join up with the Nazis. And for me, the most taboo scene with me having the sex, and the most difficult scene for me, I realized that so many more films more explicit. You look at Happiness, you look at The Woodsman, you look at The Visitor, the French poet, that Leonardo DiCaprio, where two men completely nude, sodomizing each other. And I actually was negotiating with Josh, to his dismay, and he was disturbed by it, I know. And I appreciate the fact that you still wanted to work with me. I said, listen, no nudity. I just want a headshot, and that's it. Basically, it's two fully clothed guys going to be wrestling. And then that is far from what the scene becomes.
It was wrestling. But that, you know what? But let's stick on that theme, because now you're dealing with your existential, your personal, Wendell Pierce's kind of inherited vocabulary of the appropriate, the profane, the taboo, right? Because we inherit that as members of the society, especially as a black man. Because, let's not avoid the obvious in the sense, because you're taking a risk because you're a well-known actor. Well, is he gay? Right? As if, when Cory Booker was dealing with it the other day, when somebody said, is he, he's gay, and he says, I hope you're not voting for me because you think I'm straight, right? Even though I don't happen to be gay. But, so the point is that given the taboo in black communities and in communities of color, right? When you think about, machismo is about manhood, and you're given this speech as your character. I mean, June is sitting up here saying all the stuff, about trying to tell young June basically to come out, something he can't do, because he's got to go home, because, he's exposed to his daughter. So tell us about wrestling against those taboos when we're not only infecting other people, so to speak, but we're also projecting the possibility of a courage that we can't quite enact in our own lives, but that we want to demand of other people that they somehow come up with in order to live an authentic life.
Well, I think that the moral ambiguity that's happening in the film is what happens in the black community when we deal with homosexuality. Even when we look over the generations, I remember my parents used to go to this club in New Orleans called the Powder Puff Club. And somebody would come into town and go, oh, let's get dressed up. One of those 1960 clubs, you get dressed up and take pictures of it. And it was a drag show. It was a drag show. And just no one mentioned that it was a drag show. But, oh, when you go to the French Quarter, I got to take you to the Powder Puff Club. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden, Uncle Joe comes out. What? You can't? You can't believe it. It's kids, let's get out of here. So, there's that whole conflicted nature that's in the community. The one thing that I hate, though, is if they just co-opted a phrase that's a colloquialism in our community, the down low. But all of a sudden now it's only black men are down low. I said, okay, Ted Haggard, there's a governor in New Jersey, there's, we go down the list. It's not mutually, yeah. Senator, yeah, in Minnesota it was, tapping his foot in the stall. All right? I was like, why? Of all places. You can hook up anybody, anywhere, but it's not mutually exclusive to us. And so that's why I didn't have any fear about how they would deal with me in the community, because people were going to walk out and discuss. Other people are going to come out, and so I didn't have any fear about that, because the moral ambiguity that we're kind of going investigating in the film is in the community itself.
Right.
And so I'm not afraid. And what, playing a gay role in Hollywood, that was gonna damage my career? Come on.